As we continue to witness record-shattering extreme weather, many are turning to the topic of climate change and how humans impact the environment. But did you know decisions made by humans thousands of years ago on the African continent may be one contributing factor to the vicious hurricanes we've recently experienced? RT correspondent Anya Parampil spoke with Professor David Wright of Seoul International University to discuss how humans may have transformed the region we know today as the Sahara Desert and how that desert plays a role in the formation of hurricanes.
What was the African humid period? Can you explain what that is?
So the African humid period is a time when the Earth's orbit was aligned as such that the middle latitudes, the southern middle latitudes of the Earth received a lot of sunlight. And that sunlight caused the conditions to be warmer than they are today, for example. And that encouraged the growth of vegetation across the southern middle latitudes of the Earth. And that vegetation created a feedback mechanism whereby there was more rainfall falling over the Sahara than there is today.
So the Sahara that exists today is very different from the one which existed, or the way that region existed, thousands of years ago.
The Sahara of the past and during the African humid period was completely unanalogous to anything that we have on Earth today. But it also included even tropical plants and savanna-type vegetation. It was a mosaic. The Sahara, as it existed between, say 10 and 8,000 years ago, had extremely diverse geographies and a lot of lakes and a lot of different animals living in it that we associate with grassland environments.
When and why did that change?
Well, it started to change around 8,000 years ago, a little bit longer than 8,000 years ago, and that was primarily due to natural changes in the Earth's orbit, where the Earth started to kind of wobble away from the sun a little bit. And the thing that I argue that is, let's say, a little unorthodox, is that what I did in the paper that I wrote for Frontiers in Earth Sciences is I lined up all of the events where drying occurred extremely rapidly or vegetation change occurred very rapidly, at least in my opinion, more rapid than what you would see with natural cycles. And I also plotted when and where domesticated animals first appeared. And what you see if you line the data up is that when and where domesticated animals first appear after domestication began around 8,000 years ago or 7,000 years ago, and then spread outwards from northern Africa into southern and western Africa. If you plot all of those data points up, what you see is a really rapid transition from a very diverse ecosystem full of varied types of plants and animals to one that becomes dominated by shrubs and becomes drier much faster than what you would predict if it was just a natural climate cycle.
Well, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, quote, the role the Sahara Desert plays in hurricane development is related to the easterly winds generated from the differences between the hot, dry desert in North Africa and the cooler, wetter, and forested coastal environment directly south and surrounding the Gulf of Guinea in West Africa. The result is a strong area of high-altitude winds commonly called the African easterly jet. If these winds were constant, we would also experience fewer hurricanes. What are your thoughts about that?
I think if there was more vegetation on the Sahara, that it is likely that there would be fewer hurricanes hitting the east coast of the United States and Mexico, because the way hurricanes work is that you have an atmospheric low pressure develop because of convection out of the warm tropical oceans, and when the moisture convects and when the moisture goes up into the upper atmosphere, it causes a low pressure at the surface and a high pressure up in the upper reaches of the atmosphere. And There's also high pressure dominates over the Sahara Desert, which is what keeps it dry, and low pressure over the Gulf of Guinea, which is where the tropical Congo rainforest belt is found. And that causes swirling atmospheric conditions, and once the moisture gets up into the atmosphere from the ocean, then you basically have a situation where there's already swirling atmospheric conditions because of the difference between the Sahara and the Gulf of Guinea. And and that has to do with an unvegetated, hot, unvegetated desert versus a cooler tropical rainforest environment. And so, yeah, if there was vegetation on the Sahara, then there would definitely be fewer hurricanes.
8,000 years ago, people probably didn't have any idea of what the impact their actions would be on the environment long term. As a scientist, how do you compare that situation to the one today?
Now we have better knowledge sets, so I hope that people can take the knowledge sets that science tells us that we are changing our atmosphere, we're warming it because of putting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The bigger issue is if we affect policies that that allow us to warm our atmosphere more, we're going to see conditions where you're going to get more hurricanes and more extreme weather events, more differences in vegetation between places like the Sahara and the Guinea rainforest, where you get these dynamics which make conditions much more ripe for hurricane formation, extreme weather events, desertification, droughts, pestilence, floods, these sorts of things, these extreme events. Lots of them are formed because we make choices on poor choices on where to settle, and poor choices on how to treat our atmosphere and treat the landscape that shelters us from a lot of the extreme events.
Professor David Wright, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.